My husband got my friend pregnant. Hey, what's with that look? It's your fault for being infertile. If you want compensation, I'll give it to you. How about $20K? Don't follow me around just because you're lonely. You're seriously annoying. Sorry for taking your husband. We're going to be happy together from now on. Make sure to send us your blessings. My friend lovingly rubbed her belly. I looked at her large belly and put my hand on my chin. Something felt off. Then, oh, I see. So that's it. What do you mean all of a sudden? Satisfied, I smiled and replied. My name is Nancy. I'm a 30-year-old housewife. I live with my husband, David, in a rented apartment. I met him at the workplace where I used to work. We were in different departments and started at different times, but we met by chance at the company holiday party when we sat next to each other. He has a gentle personality and can get along with anyone. That's one of the things I liked about him, and he seemed to like me too, so we started dating. We had a few arguments here and there, but things went smoothly, and after about 2 years of dating, we got married. It's been 3 years since then. We don't have any kids. It's not that we've decided not to. Both of us wanted kids. We've talked about it since we started dating, and we both love children. I even quit my job to become a full-time housewife for the sake of trying to conceive, but unfortunately, we haven't been blessed with a child even once. I understood that wanting kids isn't enough to make it happen, but being unable to conceive this long has slowly been wearing down my spirit. On top of that, David's mother, Jane, who lives nearby, visits us unannounced almost every day, pressuring me about when we'll have a child, which is also mentally exhausting. At first, she showed concern for me, so I thought she was a good mother-in-law, but over time, she's become more aggressive. Not only does she make snide remarks about children, but she often takes my belongings without asking, or criticizes my cooking. Just recently, she insisted on helping with cleaning and ended up taking all my accessories, bags, and clothes. Jane, those are my clothes. Please stop taking them without asking. I'm still using them. What are you talking about? You don't even fulfill your duties as a daughter-in-law, and you have the nerve to buy such extravagant things. Be grateful I'm using this jewelry for you. Poor David. It's so sad he's stuck with a woman like you. You're a disgrace as a daughter-in-law for not being able to have kids. Just leave us and disappear. No matter what I say, she won't listen. Even with David right there, he doesn't try to stop her. Instead, he almost seems to support her, despite her constant nagging about my inability to have children. It's not like I haven't done anything. I've gone to the gynecologist several times. After various tests, it turned out there was nothing wrong with me, so I thought there might be something wrong on David's end and suggested he get tested, but he wouldn't listen. He fully believed Jane's words that infertility is the woman's problem, so things never progressed. Then one day, while this went on, David came home from work with an unusually serious expression and asked me to sit down. Nancy, I need to talk to you. Will you listen? What? All of a sudden, I was just about to start making dinner. Does it have to be now? David stopped me from heading to the kitchen and guided me to the living room sofa. He sat down on the carpet. Then, after a silence of about 10 seconds, he began to speak. Actually, she's pregnant, so let's split up. If you want compensation, I'll give it to you. How about $20K? You know, Nancy, I've always wanted children. So, just like Mom said, I don't need a wife who can't have kids. I couldn't understand what he meant. All I could say was, what? The only words I can come up with. David repeated himself to me, still stunned. That's right. Since you're not getting pregnant, I made a baby with someone else. I admit it's wrong to have done that before we divorced, but that's what happened. I'll pay you compensation, but it's your fault, Nancy. If you had just gotten pregnant, none of this would have happened. No matter how many times he said it, I couldn't grasp it. Was this man really my husband? Where had the kind him I fell in love with gone? With my head pounding in pain, I asked the question that was bothering me. Who is she? How long has this been going on? It's Anne, your former colleague. I told her I was struggling with not having kids, and she said she'd help me. He answered calmly. Anne joined the company the same year as me, and we got along fairly well. She had attended our wedding and was even supportive when I was deciding whether to date David. This ultimate betrayal darkened my vision. The other day, the OB-GYN told us it's a boy. I can't wait for him to be born. I finally get to fulfill my dream playing catch, camping with my son. David was gleeful, leaving me shocked in his wake. Does Jane know about this? When I asked, David nodded firmly. Of course, I've already told her. Mom is thrilled to finally have a grandchild. She's ready to live with Anne too and has been preparing everything. I think they'll move in as soon as you agree to the divorce. It seemed that they were already assuming I'd go along with the divorce. At that moment, the doorbell rang. No one was expected, but David exclaimed, "They're here, they're here." He rushed to the front door and immediately came back to the living room. Standing behind him was none other than Anne. Clinging to David's arm, she was smiling. Sorry, Nancy, I ended up being the only one pregnant. He really wanted kids, so I decided to help him. He told me all about it. Nancy, you can't get pregnant, right? So there was no other way. It's your fault anyway, Nancy. She was talking nonsense as she lovingly stroked her own belly. Her belly was quite big and round. Is that child really David's? I asked, and Anne flared her nostrils. Of course it is, she declared loudly. Yes, this child is definitely mine and Anne's. Just because you couldn't have a baby doesn't mean you should say nasty things. Right, Anne. Anne, who had been so certain just a moment ago, now seemed a bit shaken. Yes, it's David's and my child, of course. To doubt that. I see. In that case, I thought I'd agree to the divorce. I decided to demand compensation from the two through my lawyer. Thanks to my lawyer, I was able to secure over $20K, and the divorce went through smoothly. Not wanting to be near David and Anne anymore, I decided to return to my family's home. The truth would come to light soon enough. About a year passed, and I found a job soon after moving back with my parents, and we settled into a comfortable life. I rarely thought about David anymore, and my days were peaceful. That day, I went to work in the morning and came home around 7 p.m. when I noticed someone pacing in front of my house. Who could that be? Curious, I cautiously approached, and as soon as they saw me, they called out, "Nancy, where have you been? We've been waiting for so long." The people behaving suspiciously were David and Jane. They'd shown up without any prior notice and were saying ridiculous things. What are you here for? We're no longer married, and it's none of your business. I tried to pass between them to enter my house, but David grabbed my arm, stopping me. After we came all this way, is that how you're going to act? I'm not leaving until you listen to what I have to say. Then he began to talk about life after our divorce. He went on for ages, complaining about everything, much of which was irrelevant. But to summarize, it seemed he had indeed been deceived by Anne. When David and Anne first moved into Jane's house, Anne had helped with the housework and kept Jane company, but she changed dramatically after giving birth. Claiming exhaustion, She left all housework to Jane, spent her days online shopping, and only took care of the baby when she felt like it. There was also something suspicious about the child. The baby apparently didn't resemble David at all. Jane couldn't shake her doubts and secretly did a DNA test, discovering that the child was not his. When David confronted her, she left the next night, taking the child with her. I get it, but what does any of this have to do with me? A woman who can't have children isn't fit to be a wife, right? You're still holding on to that. Stop being so stubborn. Let's give it another shot. Mom's getting older and says it's hard for her to do the housework every day. And I'm just a part-timer now, so money's tight. We may be divorced, but we were family once. Let's help each other out, okay? Apparently, when I'd sent a compensation demand to David's workplace during the divorce, it caused so much gossip that he ended up quitting. So these two are trying to turn me into a money machine and a housekeeper. How despicable they are. As I stared at them in disbelief, Jane took advantage of my silence and spoke up. Since you're back at your parents' place, I bet you're still not remarried, right? Of course, you wouldn't be. Only someone as kind as David would ever want to marry a hopeless woman like you. Now, pack up and come with us. From her tone, it was clear that Jane still saw me as a worthless daughter-in-law. For them to have the nerve to treat me this way, despite needing my help, was nothing but insulting. It was time they faced the consequences. I see. So that's what happened. By the way, I don't think you've ever apologized to me, have you? If you give me a sincere apology, maybe I'll consider giving us another chance. What do you say? David and Jane exchanged stunned looks, clearly not expecting me to say that. Then Jane shouted, "Why should I have to apologize to you?" But David stopped her. He must have decided it was best to apologize sincerely this time. David grabbed Jane's arm, and together, they got down on their knees to apologize. Seeing David do it, Jane reluctantly followed suit. "I'm sorry. Please, come back. Let's start over. I'm sorry for the hurtful things I said. I understand. That's enough from both of you." David and Jane, perhaps thinking I was agreeing to get back together, looked up at me with relieved smiles. "So let's." Feigning thought, I crossed my arms and looked contemplative. Then I spoke up. "I thought it over, but I'm not planning to take you back after all. Even if you apologize to someone you see as inferior, it doesn't change anything. Go on and live out your days together. You two suit each other well." David and Jane's expressions shifted to shock, then from embarrassment and anger. Their faces flushed red. "You think you can just walk away from this and act all high and mighty? You better watch yourself. It's you needs to watch yourself. No matter what you say, I'm not coming back." As I said that, Jane took a step back, clearly startled. Just then, 2 police officers approached us. It seemed a neighbor had called, noticing I was being harassed. David and Jane panicked and tried to explain themselves, but they were taken away. After that, they never showed up at my parents' house again. Rumor has it that Anne's whereabouts are still unknown, and since the divorce was never finalized, David has been drowning in debt from the purchases she made on his credit cards, struggling with bills. Now, David and Jane have sold their house, living off the paycheck from David's exhausting job and Jane's part-time work. In truth, I know where Anne is. A former colleague happened to see her in town and told me. Apparently, she was pushing a stroller with her newborn and carrying a heavy bag. Her face looked quite exhausted, and there was none of the brightness or energy she used to have. I honestly don't care what happens to Anne, but I sincerely hope her child grows up healthy. Speaking of which, There was one time after that when David contacted me, since my lawyer had advised me to leave his number unblocked just in case. I followed their suggestion. One day, as I was handling my smartphone, I accidentally answered his call by mistake. "Nancy, it's been a while. I actually have something I want to say." "What?" "I have nothing more to say to you. Well, I went to the doctor recently. Turns out the reason we couldn't have kids wasn't because of you. It was me. I finally get it now. I was so foolish. Always trusting what Mom said instead of listening to you. I'm really sorry. It's too late for that. Don't ever contact me again." With that, I hung up on him without another word. He should spend the rest of his life regretting his foolish actions. I finally felt like everything had truly ended. After that, I started dating a coworker. I told him about my previous marriage, but thankfully, he didn't mind at all. Our relationship progressed smoothly, and recently, he proposed. Of course, I accepted his proposal, and with his job transfer, we decided to move to a faraway town. Now I would finally be free from any ties with David and Jane. Now, to the present. I'm expecting my first child, something I had longed for. As my doctor assured me, my body was perfectly fine all along. My husband was overjoyed, and he promised to cherish me and our child for life. I, too, feel a deep desire to protect both him and our child. Thinking of the happy life that awaits me with my child and husband fills me with warmth.
I'm sorry, but I decided to marry Mike. My sister Anne's words over the phone left me speechless. Marry Mike? Mike is my husband. What the hell is she thinking? I was shocked when Anne called me before, saying she was having an affair with Mike. She had asked me to break up with him then, but I never heard about them getting married. I bit my lip. How are you going to marry Mike? Ask him when he gets home today. He said he's divorcing you to marry me. She was relentless, saying her piece and then laughing as she hung up. I was anxious and couldn't sit still until Mike came home from work. He seemed fed up with me, but divorce? What am I supposed to do? My name is Sarah. I'm 40 years old and I work at a clothing store. I have a son and a daughter, but no husband. I got married at 30 and divorced at 35. Let me explain how I ended up marrying and then divorcing my ex-husband, Mike. I met Mike when I was 29. He came into the clothing store where I worked. My store sells both men's and women's clothing, so we get a fair amount of male customers. It was a Sunday afternoon when I saw Mike struggling to pick out clothes and decided to help him. Are you looking for something? Yes. I want to try dressing up for a change. Mike shyly admitted he wasn't used to picking out stylish clothes. He usually bought affordable clothes randomly and didn't know what would look good. I started picking out clothes that would suit Mike's handsome face. As I selected pieces, I could see his expression brighten. This outfit is nice. I'll take it. Thank you. I couldn't help but respond cheerfully, making him smile. I felt embarrassed, but thrilled that he chose the clothes I picked out. I couldn't hide my happiness as I rang up his purchase. After that, he came to my store frequently. As a regular customer, our conversations became lively, and we talked about our hobbies beyond clothes. One day, he handed me a note. When I got home, I saw it was his contact number. I thought long and hard about the store employee-customer relationship before calling him. Hello? Mike? I spoke nervously, and I heard his familiar voice on the other end. Yes. I'm glad you called. I was half giving up hope. He sounded delighted, his voice higher than usual. We chatted as acquaintances, not as employee and customer. I learned he was 3 years older than me and worked as a salesperson at a well-known brokerage firm. He graduated from a top university, the epitome of an elite career. I wasn't attracted to his status, but as a woman, I was thrilled to meet a serious man like him and exchange contact information. It might sound exaggerated, but I truly felt this was the happiest moment of my life. Would you like to go on a date sometime? I'd love to. Mike asked me out, and I readily agreed. After a few dates, he confessed his feelings, and we started dating. We clicked from the beginning, sharing the same pace in conversation and similar interests. A year passed, and our relationship continued strong. There was never any doubt about our love for each other, and we decided to get married. I had just turned 30, and it felt like the perfect milestone to get married. Mike was also at an ideal age for marriage, so our parents quickly approved of our union. Thus, we decided to marry after 1 year of dating. Once married, I promptly shared the news with everyone around me. Everyone was happy for us, but I remember feeling embarrassed when my colleagues teased me about meeting him at my store. I was too happy to care much. With the family meetings behind us, we moved into the rental apartment we had leased together and began our married life. In the beginning, our married life was smooth. Mike often came home late because of his job, so I handled most of the household chores. The only thing he did was take out the trash, but my job was mostly shift-based, so I often finished work on time. It felt wrong to ask Mike, who worked 2 to 3 hours of overtime daily, to help more with the chores. I'm sorry for making you do all the housework, Sarah. It can't be helped. Besides, I like taking care of the house. At first, he seemed to feel guilty about not being able to participate in the chores. It was enough that he felt sorry. I respected his feelings and worked hard to balance my job and the housework. However, things began to change after a year. I got promoted from a regular employee to a store manager. With the promotion came additional responsibilities that had to be handled after regular hours. The higher salary was part of the deal. As a manager, I was determined to create a pleasant work environment for the other staff. As work got busier, I started to neglect household duties. We've been eating the same meals a lot lately. One evening, while eating stew for dinner, Mike commented, "I'm sorry." He was right. Since work had become busier, I had been making dishes like stew or pot-au-feu that I could prepare in bulk and keep for a few days. It was understandable that he was frustrated with the almost college student-like diet. However, I was too exhausted from work to accept his criticism. I was doing my best to manage the housework despite being busy. If he had complaints about my cooking, he could cook for himself. I almost retorted but ended up just apologizing. From that day, Mike's attitude began to change gradually, which was foreseeable. The next day, when I served the same stew, he visibly grimaced. I felt bad, knowing it was the same as the previous day, but there was still stew left. Even if I told him that I hated eating the same meals every day too, he glanced at me as if to say, "So what?" I felt an urge to run away from the situation. We both worked hard every day. But since becoming a manager, I couldn't shake the sense of inequality between us. Our relationship began to deteriorate after just a year of marriage, but in that first year, I became pregnant with Mike's child. When I told him about the pregnancy, he responded with, "Oh, I see." He didn't seem very happy. Though I was puzzled, I convinced myself he just hadn't yet felt the reality of becoming a father. About 8 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. We named our son Sam. I took time off work to focus on caring for Sam and managing the house. Before taking maternity leave, I had assumed that work was more challenging than childcare, but reality proved otherwise. Every night was spent waking up every 1 or 2 hours for feedings. I struggled with diaper changes and preparing formula. Sam would cry endlessly for reasons I couldn't understand. I had almost no personal time and was left alone to manage the unfamiliar tasks of childcare while he remained indifferent. Even when I was overwhelmed by the challenges of my first-time parenting, he never offered to help. He acted as if it had nothing to do with him, completely ignoring my struggles. When he came home from work, he exaggerated his fatigue and quickly retreated to the bedroom. Even if he couldn't participate in the childcare, I wished he would at least acknowledge my efforts. I wondered if I was being selfish for feeling this way. However, he was responsible with finances, contributing to our child's future by getting a college savings plan and covering medical checkup expenses. When I wanted to go to the salon, he even hired a helper to give me some free time. While he didn't engage directly in childcare, he wasn't entirely uncooperative. I always questioned his inconsistent behavior. 2 years into my lonely journey of childcare, I gave birth to our second child, a baby girl named Karen. This time around, I managed the challenges more calmly than with my first child. However, taking care of 2 young children alone still required immense patience, especially since our eldest was only 2 years old. By this time, our conversations had dwindled. Mike started working even longer hours, often coming home after I was already asleep. Our lives were completely out of sync. I couldn't help but feel lonely, despite accepting it as the way things were. Yet, I was still happy back then, unaware of what he was really doing after work. Our son, Sam, turned 4, and Karen was now 2. I had returned to work when I was 35, putting both children in a daycare center. Though I was no longer a manager, I accepted my role as a regular employee, as managing a store while raising 2 small children seemed impossible. Therefore, I tried to think that I was fully satisfied with my position as an ordinary employee at work. Then, everything changed that summer. One evening, after picking up the kids from daycare and starting dinner, my rarely used smartphone rang. Seeing Anne's name on the screen surprised me. And, my older sister by 3 years, was a busy stage actress and seldom called. We were never close. And was beautiful, popular with both men and women, while I was plain and reserved. Our parents and friends often compared us, and I was jealous of how everyone adored Anne. Naturally, I never tried to get closer to her. Even as adults, I believed we lived in different worlds. So, her call was shocking. What could she want now? Thinking it might be a mistake, I answered anyway, out of sisterly duty. Hello? Finally, you picked up, Sarah. Anne's high-pitched voice wasn't one I wanted to hear for long. What's up? I could hear her take a deep breath on the other end. Well, I'm dating your husband, Mike. So, I'd like you to leave him. What? The sudden revelation made me almost drop the knife I was holding. Didn't you hear me? I said, leave him. What do you mean? And casually admitted to the affair and asked me to leave my husband. I was too shocked to respond, frozen in place. Fortunately, the kids were asleep after returning from daycare, sparing them from seeing my distressed face. It's exactly what it sounds like. I've been seeing Mike for a long time. A long time? Since when? Well, since before your son was born, so about 4 years. I felt dizzy at the length of time. Sam was born about a year after we got married. How could Mike, who used to be so serious, have started an affair with and at such a time? Mike said he started noticing me during the family meeting. At first, he tried to ignore it because I was his fiance's sister. But then we ran into each other in town. I asked him if he wanted to grab a coffee, and he immediately agreed. After that, it was really easy. He fell for my charms. We went on a few dates after work and then started seeing each other. I felt nauseous hearing Anne's truth. I couldn't believe that serious him had so easily had an affair with someone like Anne. But thinking back to how he barely talked to me at home, and wasn't very involved in housework or childcare, things started to make sense. A surge of anger rose up against her. She was definitely the one to blame. She had seduced my husband and made him fall for her. She had always been popular with men, so even making my husband like her was probably easy for her. And could do that. Unlike me. How could you do something so horrible? I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't seem to show any guilt, and it was really getting on my nerves. I just laid out the bait. It was Mike who took it. If he really cared about Sarah, my bait would have seemed like trash. But to Mike, it looked like a feast. She laughed crudely, making me want to punish her right then and there. But since we were only connected by phone, I had no way to confront her physically, only with words. And was much more eloquent than me. So, hurry up and leave him. Clinging to him is pointless. Mike is completely in love with me. And hung up before I could say anything to stop her, leaving behind her cruel words. I was shaken all day. I had never once considered that Mike might be cheating. And with and of all people. That night, I confronted Mike when he got home late. Mike, is it true you're having an affair with Anne? It took a lot of courage to ask. Mike visibly flinched at the unexpected question. How did you find out? Instead of denying it, he confirmed it. I stared at him in disbelief. And called today. She said she's having an affair with you and wants me to leave you. Mike remained silent, unable to say anything, as if he had no words left. I had hoped he would deny it or at least get upset. Mike and Anne really were having an affair. The fact was crushing me. From then on, every day was chillingly cold at home. Only the children, unaware of anything, continued to play happily as usual. Mike barely interacted with the kids, so I vowed to stay strong and act normally around them. A month after our marriage started falling apart, and called me again. Hello? What do you want this time? Sarah, don't be so harsh. Have you thought about what we discussed last time? Anne's high-pitched voice sounds like she's done nothing wrong. What do you mean, last time? You know, I asked you to break up with Mike. I can't help but get angry at her words. How long is she going to keep treating me like an idiot? I was about to snap back when she made a shocking statement. Sorry, but I decided to marry Mike. I was speechless at her words over the phone. Marry Mike? Mike is my husband. What the hell is she thinking? I was surprised when Anne called me before, saying she was having an affair with Mike. She had asked me to break up with him then too, but I hadn't heard anything about them getting married. I bit my lip. How could you marry him? Ask him when he gets home today. He said he wants to divorce you and marry me. And said this firmly, then laughed and hung up the phone. I was anxious and couldn't stay calm until Mike came home from work. Sure, he seemed fed up with me, but divorce? What should I do? That day, I couldn't focus on work at all and went home in a daze, putting the kids to bed. When Mike got home around midnight, I asked him what Anne had said. Are you planning to marry Anne? Honestly, I thought Mike wasn't serious about Anne. I thought he was just being tempted and played by her. But Mike, yes, nodded awkwardly. What? I felt the blood drain from my face. He really wants to marry her? I stared at him in disbelief. I was going to tell you today. Sarah, please, let's divorce. I want to marry Anne. With that, Mike took a divorce application form out of his work bag. His section was already filled out. Looking at the form, I felt like crying. Mike was never a man of many words. He hardly ever helped with housework or childcare. Even so, I thought he was working hard for our family. Mike's determination seemed unshakable. His expression indicated that he wouldn't be moved by anything I said. "You're the worst." I couldn't help but feel my trust in Mike shatter as I reluctantly accepted the divorce papers. For a moment, Mike looked relieved. I wanted to lash out at him right then, but I held back for the sake of the children, who might wake up. And so, our 5-year marriage came to an end. The only thing I worried about after divorcing Mike was our children. I absolutely did not want to be separated from them. I insisted on this point. In the end, I was granted custody of the children, which brought me some relief. It was also agreed that Mike would send child support every month. Of course, I received a substantial compensation from both Mike and Anne. Despite this, the two of them remained unperturbed and went on to remarry. I had no idea where to direct my frustration. After that, life became really tough. Even though I received child support, I had to support the household entirely on my own. I realized how much Mike had financially supported us until now. I worked part-time at a clothing store and did as much freelance work as I could at home. Even then, it was all I could do to make ends meet, and there was no way I could take the children on vacations or do fun activities. I felt sorry for the children, but seeing their smiles when we played at the local park made me determined to work even harder for them. As I desperately worked, 5 years flew by. One Sunday afternoon, I received a call from an unknown number on my smartphone. Who could it be? I wondered as I answered the call, thinking it might be a wrong number or a sales call. Hello? Sarah? The faintly familiar voice made me search my memory for someone I knew. I realized it was Mary, Mike's mother, who I had not seen since my divorce from Mike 5 years ago. Mary? I asked cautiously, not wanting to embarrass myself if I was wrong. Yes, it's me. I'm sorry to call you out of the blue. She knew that Mike had cheated on me, leading to our divorce. So, she probably felt a sense of guilt towards me. She had always been a timid person, but now her voice sounded even more frail than usual. Is there something you need? Getting a call from Mary now made me feel uneasy. Yes. I'll be straightforward. My son, Mike, passed away from terminal cancer yesterday. What? I couldn't believe the words I was hearing. Mike passed away from terminal cancer? It was hard to believe. When he was living with me, he never seemed to have any health issues. I'm sorry to shock you. We are still struggling to accept it ourselves. He was only 43. It was liver cancer, and by the time it was discovered, it was already terminal. I felt a mix of emotions. Mike had betrayed me and married Anne. There was no room for forgiveness for that. Even though he was dead, it didn't change the fact that he had wronged me. Still, I couldn't help but feel shaken by the news of his death. He wrote a will, and he mentioned you in it. I know it's a lot to ask, but could you come see us? I'd like you to hear his final wishes. All right. I was surprised to hear that Mike had mentioned me in his will. We had barely communicated since our divorce. Why would he mention me now? Despite my apprehension, I decided to follow Mary's request. A week later, after Mike's funeral, his relatives gathered together. I left the children with my parents and headed to the place Mary had specified. It's been a while, Sarah. Seeing Anne, I didn't know how to respond, so I ignored her. And looked a little haggard, her once beautiful face now appearing exhausted and worn out. Her sharp personality added a hint of intimidation to her presence. Even with Mike gone, I felt not an ounce of sympathy for Anne. I would never forgive her for stealing Mike away from me, not in this lifetime. Finally, the executor opened the will and began reading its contents aloud. The entire family watched quietly, waiting with bated breath. You see, after marrying Anne, Mike had been promoted to a company executive position. Naturally, his salary must have skyrocketed as a result. Furthermore, during our marriage, he had acquired numerous assets, including real estate properties. We divided them during the divorce, but there should still be a substantial amount remaining. I wasn't sure how much the relatives knew about this, but Anne was certainly aware of Mike's wealth. She even seemed to be eagerly anticipating how much of the assets would be left to her. The executor read through the will's contents in order. That's when we were hit with a shocking revelation. Incredibly, it stated that all the assets were to be given to me, while all the liabilities were to be transferred to Anne. Of course, considering the legal portion, the part about giving me everything meant that Anne, as his wife, would also receive a share. However, as a childless couple, Anne had expected to inherit the entire estate, so she became visibly agitated and furious. Wait a minute. What's the meaning of this? Why are the liabilities going to me? And why is Sarah, who's supposed to be divorced, receiving assets? Sarah, were you secretly involved with Mike? Anne screamed, her hair disheveled as she lunged forward, grabbing my collar. I don't know. I barely saw Mike after our divorce. I had forgotten about him until I was summoned here today. What? That can't be true. Then why are you being favored in the will? That's... Honestly, I was just as perplexed. Why on earth would Mike leave me, a non-heir? A portion of his estate in his will? I was utterly confused by this unexpected turn of events. At that moment, Mary stepped forward, holding an envelope in her hand. The will was in the possession of the court-appointed executor, so this appeared to be something else entirely. And the answer to your question is written in this letter, Mary announced in a clear voice. Anne turned to face Mary, a look of surprise on her face. What do you mean? You see, this letter was written by Mike while he was in the hospital and handed to me before he passed. Unlike the will, it simply expresses Mike's thoughts and feelings. But the contents were so important that I decided to reveal this letter if anything happened. I'll read it now. Mary opened the letter Mike had allegedly written and began reading its contents. This is what it said. Ever since he started complaining about feeling unwell, and had inexplicably begun feeding him only heavily flavored foods. Dishes that were clearly high in salt, sugar, and syrup. Moreover, she started making a lot of fried foods, which she had never done before, claiming they were too much of a hassle to clean up afterward. When he pointed this out to her, "I'm just in the mood for strong flavors," she would dismissively say. Finding it suspicious, one night he pretended to be asleep and overheard and talking on the phone with someone outside his room. The content of, "His illness will worsen soon. Then I'll share some of the inheritance with you." The conversation was appalling. It became clear that Anne was trying to push him to his limits. That's why he decided not to leave her any assets. Instead, he wanted to bequeath them to Sarah. The truth was, during his marriage to Sarah, he was so busy with work that he hardly had time for family matters. I truly loved Sarah and the kids, but I was too awkward and couldn't do anything for them. Please forgive me. I'm ashamed of my weakness of heart that led me to cheat. I hope you can find happiness with the children from now on. The atmosphere in the room changed dramatically when Mary read Mike's letter aloud. Is it true that Anne drove Mike to the edge? Isn't that going a bit too far? The relatives glared at Anne. I was dumbfounded by the unexpected contents of the letter. But I couldn't help but be moved by the fact that Mike loved me and the children. Mike. I'm the one who should be sorry. I regretted not being there for Mike when he was having a hard time at work. Mary rubbed my back. I couldn't stop crying.
What's with this letter? Saying I drove Mike to the edge? Ridiculous. This letter must be a fake.
And insisted that she was not guilty. But Mary went up to Anne and said,
It's not fake. This handwriting is definitely Mike's. You committed a crime and don't even reflect on it. You have no right to receive Mike's assets. Leave this place right now.
She scolded Anne. With a terrifying expression on her face, I trembled as I listened beside her.
What? It's useless to say anything to this family. Fine. I'm never coming back to this house again. Don't ever appear in front of me again either.
I shouted on impulse. I'm tired of a life manipulated by Anne. I will firmly accept Mike's wishes and find happiness with the children. And left us, raving mad.
Mary, thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't do anything for you when I heard Sarah and Mike were getting divorced. Please be happy with your grandchildren.
I'm really glad Mary is such a good person. I took Mike's feelings to heart and went home. Since then, Anne has been saddled with a huge debt due to the negative assets Mike left her, and it seems Anne, who was a Broadway actress, stopped getting work after marrying Mike, perhaps due to aging. Having lost her job as a Broadway actress, and had no choice but to depend on Mike financially. Still, Mike worked hard for his wife, but at first he probably never imagined that Anne was making meals that would make him sick in order to get his inheritance. Mike had become a company executive, and even without targeting an inheritance, he should have been able to live a relatively affluent life if he lived normally. Nevertheless, the fact that she was after his inheritance means that Anne had no love for Mike. From the beginning, she seduced him for his money and tried to get the inheritance by making me and Mike divorce. I was horrified by her ugly thoughts. But even her is now living a hellish life every day. Because the man Anne was cheating with and trying to steal the inheritance with was caught for another fraud scheme. Naturally, because Anne's existence was also revealed, she ended up being sent to the FBI. She also has the crime of trying to take Mike's life, so she probably won't be able to move from the FBI for a while. Even if she's sent to prison and gets out, what awaits her is repayment of the debts Mike saddled her with. I didn't feel the slightest bit sorry for Anne's bleak future ahead. I want her to reflect properly. And I sincerely hope she never makes the same mistake again. Meanwhile, with the assets passed on from Mike, the kids and I went on our first trip to Hawaii. Seeing them both looking so happy makes me feel blissful. During our marriage, he seemed awkward and at a loss with how to interact with the kids, but now I know he truly loved them. From now on, I want to spend happy days with the children while being grateful to Mike, who left me such precious treasures.
Stay here. All right?
I felt like I was seeing the terrifying face of my beloved Sherwood for the first time. As I let go of his hand in fear, the door above my head closed. An unpleasant sound clanked. It was locked. Trapped in the dark basement, I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Because right now, I'm holding a baby. The adorable little being born just yesterday, Terrence. Why so suddenly? Tears well up. To be locked in a dark basement, with this body that was just born. Terrence, whom I had just nursed, is sleeping, unaware of anything. That was the only consolation. It must have been about 3 hours. When I turned on the only lamp and finished nursing again, a dark shadow appeared in the light of that lamp.
Who's there?
I turn around, trembling with fear. The dark shadow that suddenly appeared from the back of the basement. It was the bluebird of happiness that gave me the chance to lift me out of the depths of misery. My name is Blondie, 27 years old. I work as a veterinary nurse at an animal hospital in town. Recently married, I was living happy days. My husband's name is Sherwood. He is 2 years older than me. He is a serious and gentle person. He's so kind that he thinks of others and acts accordingly. I even had a sense of respect for him. It's like a dream that I got to date Sherwood, got proposed to, and even made it to marriage. But somewhere in my heart, there was always a dark feeling taking root. The reason is none other than my unfortunate childhood. My parents, Sean and Alana, are small-town doctors. They raised my older brother Calvin and me to become doctors. They had always been obsessed with the status of being a doctor and wouldn't allow any other path. When I was in elementary school, my artwork depicting a groomer for the theme of future dreams was torn up as soon as I brought it home.
I can't believe you draw anything other than a doctor. A groomer. You've got to be kidding me.
My mother, Alana, cursed my dream and threw it away like trash. Behind me, crying, my father Sean was sneering.
I knew girls were no good.
Becoming a doctor is impossible for Blondie. Well, we have Calvin. I'm counting on you, Calvin. Yeah. My clever brother never defied our parents. We were raised as the favored brother and the oppressed sister since long ago. The fact that our distorted family somehow managed to maintain balance was undoubtedly thanks to my brother's hard work. He was always on my side. Blondie, pursue the path you love. Leave Sean and Alana to me. But then, you'll. It's okay. I don't mind becoming a doctor that much. Blondie, your dream now is to become a veterinary nurse, right? Yeah. Becoming a vet seems difficult. He never laughed at my dream, even though I wasn't as good at studying as he was. My kind brother was my sole emotional support and a breakwater against our parents. I loved my brother dearly. But that summer of his sophomore year in high school, he died in a traffic accident. It was an unbelievably painful, heart-wrenching farewell. And with the balance of the family he had been protecting now shattered, our parents started treating me even more like a nuisance. What on earth, such a useless daughter remains in this house? Oh, how unfortunate we are.
Why did it have to be Calvin? If only you had disappeared instead.
The moment I heard those words, I heard the sound of my life crumbling at my feet. No, it had been a parent-child relationship built on sand, already on the verge of collapse. Still, I gritted my teeth and made it through middle and high school. And after graduating high school, I chose to attend a university where I could study veterinary nursing. Of course, my parents, who wanted me to go to medical school, were furious.
You ungrateful brat. Don't ever set foot in this house again.
I was disowned and driven out of the house. Fortunately, as an honors student, I was exempt from tuition fees, so I didn't have to give up on going to college. I paid for my living expenses with part-time jobs while pursuing the path I loved. It was busy but fulfilling days. Little by little, a sense of self-affirmation started welling up from within. My life was just beginning from here. During that time, at a part-time job introduced by my seminar professor, I met my now husband, Sherwood. We fell in love, started dating, and decided to get married. That's when I contacted my parents for the first time since being disowned. I thought I should at least inform them if I was getting married, but that was a mistake.
Marriage? The other person is a doctor, of course, right?
No, he's just a regular company employee. But you know, he's
a company employee. Didn't I say I won't accept anyone other than a doctor? You're really hopeless, Blondie. Don't contact me about such things anymore.
Sean interrupted my words and berated me. And then, Alana, who took over, also let out an exasperated voice.
You really keep disappointing us. How disheartening.
The two of them wouldn't listen to me at all. Contacting them after so long only made me feel more miserable. With such experiences, our wedding turned out to be a small one. Actually, Sherwood's father, Eleanor, is the president of a large corporation, and Sherwood also works at a subsidiary as the next president. Originally, they would have wanted to hold a grand wedding with many guests. But they prioritized my circumstances. A small wedding held in Hawaii. Welcomed into a warm family, I secretly cried while hiding my face with a veil. That was the first time I learned that tears can flow even when you're happy. 2 years into our marriage, our peaceful life continued. Around the time we were thinking of getting a new house, I finally became pregnant. When it was revealed to be a boy at the checkup, I was filled with a different kind of happiness than ever before. But at the same time,
should I tell my parents about the pregnancy?
I had another problem to worry about regarding my parents. It will be their only grandchild. But, well, let's cherish Blondie's feelings. It may sound strange, but even after all they did, I still had a feeling of wanting to rely on my parents. If it's a grandchild, maybe they'll be happy too. With such faint hopes, I made the call after 2 years. Hello, Alana? It's me, Blondie. You know, I couldn't quite understand their reaction when I reported the pregnancy. But as soon as I told them it was a boy, it must be Calvin's reincarnation. Alana's tone changed, and Sean, who excitedly took over the phone, spoke in a bright voice for the first time in a while.
Well done, Blondie. A boy, how joyous.
Yeah. For some reason, even though they were happy, a chilling sensation enveloped me. I had a bad feeling. And then, Sean's next words shocked me like never before. When that child is born, hand him over to us. We'll raise him to be a fine doctor.
What?
At first, I didn't understand what he was saying. But as my parents on the other end of the receiver clamored about Calvin's reincarnation and successor, even I turned pale at the thought that this was definitely abnormal. I had a vague feeling, but as I thought, my parents are crazy. Overwhelmed by a feeling akin to horror, I couldn't bear it and hung up the phone in the middle of the conversation. Then, the answering machine kept receiving calls and messages over and over again. Moreover, they even barged into our apartment and demanded,
hand over our grandchild.
Even Sherwood and I couldn't take it anymore and decided to consult his parents. I felt bad about worrying my in-laws, but the grandchild was also precious to them. After hearing the story, they thought about it with care. Right now is a crucial time for Blondie. It might be better for her to stay somewhere else. As a result of the discussion, it was decided that we would be isolated in a villa area as per Eleanor's suggestion. Sherwood arranged with the company to work remotely, and my mother-in-law, Kitty, would take care of household chores and my personal needs. I was deeply grateful to my in-laws for making all the perfect arrangements. Really, for everything. I'm sorry, Kitty. Don't apologize, Blondie. You haven't done anything wrong. Kitty is a very kind person who has been worried about my parent-child relationship since the beginning of our marriage. She is such a warm-hearted person that I think Sherwood is kind because he was raised by this Kitty. I like her. Living in isolation, I thought about giving birth. And to avoid being found by my parents, I decided to have a home birth at this villa. When Sherwood heard about my decision, he was surprised but accepted it. I thought you were a strong-willed person, Blondie, but I didn't expect this much. I understand. I'll cooperate too. I didn't know he thought of me that way, and I felt a little embarrassed. Kitty, who heard the story, also nodded seriously.
I understand. I have a friend who is a midwife nearby. I'll ask if she can come.
Thank you very much. The midwife introduced to me was a stout woman named Evelyn. She firmly assured me that she would fully cooperate with this special delivery. I live nearby, so I can rush over any time. Leave it to me. Evelyn puffed out her chest reassuringly with a thump. I couldn't be grateful enough. What made me even happier was that when we moved to this villa, Sherwood brought a dog with him. Sherwood made my dream of having a toy poodle come true on this occasion. I thought it might be a good distraction. And it can be a playmate for the child in the future.
Thank you. It's so adorable.
The black toy poodle was friendly and quickly grew attached to us. I named it TYL. The fairy tale I read long ago, The Bluebird. I loved the mysterious adventure group searching for happiness, so I borrowed a name from one of the characters. The bluebird that brings happiness. I wish it would appear for me someday. And so, in the unpopular villa, I started preparing for childbirth. To ensure a safe delivery, I made sure to eat well and exercise moderately. The checkups went smoothly, and without any major issues, the baby in my belly grew day by day. The natural environment and stress-free life must be good, Evelyn said. Coordination with the hospital in case of emergency was also prepared, with Evelyn at the center. And finally, labor began. The pain and suffering were so intense that I felt like I was going to faint. Around dawn, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. Evelyn brought the newborn baby close to my chest and showed me his face. My very cute baby. Warm and fresh. It was smooth for a first birth. An easy delivery, above all. Evelyn smiled happily. Sherwood, who was present, cried his heart out, and Kitty, who had been waiting, shed tears and comforted me. The baby's name had been decided in advance through discussions with Sherwood. We named him Terrence.
Everyone, thank you so much.
No matter how much I expressed my gratitude, it wouldn't be enough. As Terrence slept beside me, I felt a happiness I had never experienced before and fell into a deep sleep. But it happened in the middle of the night. Still sleeping lightly after giving birth, I was awakened by the sound of someone rushing over. Sherwood and Kitty, who had been in another room, came in with panicked expressions.
This is bad, Blondie. It seems your parents found out where we are. What? How? I don't know. But they'll definitely be here soon too. You need to hide for now.
Sherwood and Kitty pull me out, still unable to move my body as I want. They took me, holding a squirming Terrence, to the basement connected to the hallway. This is a soundproof room for playing musical instruments. Sorry it's dark since the light bulb isn't on right now, but wait here. The room is about 12.8 square meters in size. It must have been hastily prepared. A makeshift bed, a light bulb lamp, water, and food are placed inside. Then, Kitty, who had gone to check the situation outside, returned.
This is bad. They're almost here.
Indeed, the sound of a car stopping could be heard from outside. My parents had arrived. No. They'll take him away. My child. It's all right. That happened. Sherwood hugs me as I panic, and then I'm lowered into the basement.
Stay here. You hear me?
Sherwood has an unusually stern look on his face. Startled by his expression, which also looks frightening, I let go of his hand, and the door is shut and locked. Why so suddenly, like this? I never thought I'd have to hide in a basement like this right after giving birth. I was about to cry, but Terrence let out a small cry in my arms, so I hurriedly soothed him. That's right, I have to pull myself together for his sake too. Suppressing my agitated feelings, I focused on calming Terrence down. And after about 3 hours, I suppose. Having finished nursing Terrence, I was staring at the door above that still wouldn't open. There, in the light from the lamp, a dark shadow suddenly appeared.
Who's there?
I turn around in surprise. From behind, a dark shadow slowly approached. It was Tyl. Woof. The toy poodle Tyl wags its tail as it approaches me. I was startled by the sudden appearance of my pet. How did you? Where on earth did you come from? For 3 hours, it had been quiet here. Where did it suddenly appear from? As if to answer that mystery, Tyl shows me the path it came from with its nose. Amazingly, there was a small door in the back. Hidden in the shadows, I couldn't notice it with just the unreliable light from the lamp. Apparently, there are 2 entrances here. Opening it, there are more stairs, and going up leads to the backyard. Holding Terrence, I enter the villa from outside in my bare feet. Just before entering the living room, I hear the grating voices of my parents screaming.
Bring out our grandchild now. We're saying we'll raise him. That child is Calvin's reincarnation. He was born to become a doctor.
My parents' claims haven't changed at all. While soothing Terrence, who's about to cry, I peek into the living room. Sherwood and Kitty were standing up to them.
I can't believe you even hired a detective to track this place down. Have you ever thought about Blondie's happiness? Happiness? Someone who brings shame to her parents doesn't deserve that. More importantly, our grandchild. You don't understand anything. That child is my and Blondie's precious baby. He wasn't born as a reincarnation or to become a doctor. He was born to be loved by us.
Sherwood says firmly in a dignified voice. He, who is usually gentle, was looking at my parents with an unusually stern expression. I had no idea he had such a strong side to him.
But he's our grandchild. He's our grandchild too. This is our villa. Please leave.
Kitty is also taking my side. With her back straight, in a resolute manner just like Sherwood. I'm sure they've been having this kind of exchange the whole time. I gulp down my saliva. I have to end this now. Because I'm a mother now. I take a step forward.
Get out. Blondie!
Sherwood and Kitty are surprised by my sudden appearance. I feel bad for them, who were trying to protect me. But this is something I have to bring to a close. I'm the one who should deliver the final words to these people.
You're the ones who disowned me. I thought I had already cut ties with you. We don't need a useless daughter. Just hand over that grandchild. It would be far better if we raised him.
That's right. Calvin, you've come back to us. How adorable. The cruel and arrogant Sean. Alana, who sees nothing but Calvin. I brush away Alana's reaching hand and say in a trembling voice.
I always wanted to be loved by you. I thought maybe one day you would love me. But
I glare at the 2 of them.
Having this child made me realize I don't need you anymore.
Terrence woke up at my loud voice. I entrusted the crying Terrence to Sherwood and Kitty, and revealed the anger I had never directed at my parents before.
Get out. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. Police? How dare you talk to your parents like that?
Sean raises one hand. I instinctively close my eyes, bracing for the impact, but Sherwood stands in front of me and stops his arm.
Even if you're Sean, I won't allow that. Ugh.
Sherwood's body is a size larger than Sean's. The difference in physique made even Sean flinch. I quickly pull out my phone and show them the phone app screen displaying 911.
I'm serious. Now get out. Otherwise, I really will call the police.
I was trembling slightly. I stand firm so they don't notice. Faced with my determination, my parents finally seem to be overwhelmed. They turn around and try to leave the living room. They seem to be shouting something at the entrance, but I couldn't make it out. Because I collapsed on the spot from the relief and release of tension.
Blondie! Are you okay?
I'm fine. Sherwood immediately supports me. Having just given birth, opposing my parents seemed to have drained a considerable amount of energy. But for some reason, my heart feels clear now. I was finally able to express my true feelings to my parents. As I naturally smile, feeling refreshed, Sherwood gently smiles back at me. Then, TYL snuggles up and licks my cheek. I'm glad you came. Thank you, TYL. I don't know if TYL, who answers with a bark, understands or not. But it was because I was led by TYL that I was able to leave the basement and face my parents. The defiance against my parents that I couldn't do before. This little one who gave me that opportunity might be my bluebird. Feeling reassured, I fell asleep right there in Sherwood's arms. The next day, when I explained the situation to Evelyn, who came to the house again, she showed a very indignant expression.
My goodness. That happened? From now on, I'll stay over and accompany Blondie. If they come again, I'll chase them away.
Thank you, Evelyn. Evelyn is as reliable as ever.
But I can't believe they would do that to their own child. Right, Kitty?
Huh? Yes. Kitty, spoken to by Evelyn, hung her head for a moment. Kitty has been a little gloomy since last night. I'm filled with a feeling of guilt, thinking she must be tired from dealing with my parents. As for Sherwood, he was busy during the day with birth registration and preparing our new home. And to prevent my parents from finding out about the new home currently being prepared, we also decided to apply for restrictions on viewing Social Security information. This may take some time, but we'll do everything we can. Surrounded by strong allies like him, I also resolved to become stronger myself. That night, the day I was able to rebel, my heart was reborn. I will never let Terrence be taken away. And half a month later. Finally, the time for confrontation came again. While taking a walk in the garden, my parents suddenly appeared, having hidden somewhere. They try to forcibly take my Terrence, who I'm holding in my arms.
Hand him over, Blondie. We'll raise this child. Stop it.
They arrogantly claim they'll make him a doctor, that he's Calvin's reincarnation, unchanged from before. Sherwood and Evelyn immediately rush over.
Don't lay a hand on Blondie and Terrence. You guys! I just called the police.
At the word police, my parents involuntarily let go. I declared to the two of them firmly. Not with the momentum driven by anger like before, but in a calm and clear tone.
Stop it. This is kidnapping. Kidnapping! We're just taking our grandchild. I am Terrence's mother. If you take him without my permission, it's clearly kidnapping.
A tense atmosphere hangs in the air. Before, I would have simply cowered in front of my parents. But I'm no longer these people's daughter. I've become Terrence's mother. For the sake of my new family, I'll stand up even to my real parents. Having resolved myself to face my parents, who would surely come someday, I had nothing left to fear. Silence fills the area. And then, a police car really does come, so my parents hurriedly flee.
As if anyone would actually call them. You ungrateful child!
Kitty was filming the whole scene of my parents retreating back as they ran away from afar. Actually, we had discussed gathering evidence the next time the two of them came. This video and the testimony of the police who witnessed it became irrefutable evidence, and the restriction on viewing Social Security information at the government office proceeded smoothly. The people at the office sympathized with me, saying it must have been tough, so the sight of my parents in the video must have been quite unsightly. Watching the video again, I also thought it was disgraceful. I had wished to be loved by these two people. I want to hug my younger self. Then, a month later, we moved into the new home Sherwood had prepared. The large 2-story detached house with a garden even has a dog run course for TYL, as I had hoped. It's a lovely garden with a swing where Terrence will surely play someday. This doesn't completely sever ties with my parents, but we were able to put physical distance between us. They no longer know where I live, and I can finally devote myself to raising my child with peace of mind. And the days pass peacefully, though hectic with childcare. Kitty also drops by from time to dote on Terrence. Eventually, Terrence turns 3 and has grown up well. He now spends happy days as a beloved child. Then one day, Sherwood shows me a certain online news article.
Hey, isn't this about Blondie's parents? What?
On the phone screen was an online news article about a local family doctor in my hometown getting flamed on social media. The trigger for the flaming was a post made on social media with their real name, stating that their medical examinations were too high-handed and lacked compassion for patients. If it had been just that, it would have been a common reputation for a doctor and unlikely to become news, but my parents had the nerve to argue back on social media. The mudslinging exchange that followed became a hot topic on social media and eventually caught the public's attention. Also, regarding reviews on their website, they made the mistake of not responding to good reviews but arguing against bad ones. Their arrogant and haughty attitude seemed to be directed not only at me but also at their patients. They brought the patients' anger upon themselves, caused the flaming, and lost credibility. As I read through the contents of the article, it ended with my parents closing down their hospital. For a small private hospital in town, reputation is everything. They probably couldn't keep going.
I'm at a loss for words.
Just getting flamed and falling this far, their reputation in the local community was probably not that good to begin with, and they had few patients. That's why they desperately needed a successor to make a comeback. My parents, who had been pushing me to become a doctor since I was little. I don't know what made them act that way, but lately, I think I don't even have to try to understand. They tried to make their children and grandchildren clean up their mess, only thinking about themselves. Sherwood asked me worriedly as I held my head. Sorry, I reminded you of it. Maybe I shouldn't have told you. No. I'm glad I know. Thank you. I no longer worry about my parents. But when I think about those parents, I start to worry about the future. Predicting what might happen in the future with those two, I decide to have a talk with Sherwood. And a few months later, as expected, my parents barged into the company where Sherwood works. Even though they don't know our new address, they knew Sherwood's workplace since we told them when we got married. It was my fault for still clinging to my parents back then, but they seem to have targeted this place. However, my parents can't even meet me. We had anticipated that they might barge in and discussed various things beforehand. Even if they barge in, Terrence and I must never go outside. Give them a chance to talk, just once. Deal with it in the president's office. And later, I heard there was an exchange like this.
So you came after all, Sean and Alana.
What?
Well, of course. Blondie already severed ties with you as parents. Then, you're strangers to me too.
He had also become stronger after this incident. As the next president, he confronted my parents and asked them why they came here today. As expected, it was money. The private hospital was driven to bankruptcy, and my parents had no connections to any hospitals that would hire them. The lack of connections was probably due to their personalities. Still, they thought they could just open a new practice in a different location. They came to borrow startup funds from the company where Sherwood works. The term shameless might exist just for these people. $100,000. No, even $50,000 will do. We'll pay back the borrowed money properly.
That's right. This is a connection too. We'll give up on Terrence, so please.
Then Kitty, who had been contacted, arrived. As soon as she burst into the president's office, she said in a strong tone,
"You two, enough already. We don't have any money to lend you. Have some shame."
A fierce backlash from Kitty, who seems gentle. To the two who were stunned, Kitty showed her last trump card.
"I have many acquaintances in the medical field. Many of them are in respectable positions." "What?"
Kitty names a few acquaintances she claims are friends. Each of them seems to be a well-known figure in the medical world, and my parents' faces instantly turned pale. Their foolish actions and personalities have already been conveyed. Arrangements have been made to put pressure on them so they can't open a new private hospital.
"How do you have that kind of authority? If you interfere with my son and DIL's happiness, we'll thoroughly interfere with you too."
She was like a fierce god, Sherwood said. My parents are driven out by Kitty's glare. At the company, they were immediately added to the suspicious persons list and can no longer even enter the building. Also, the acquaintances in the medical world that Kitty mentioned seem to be no bluff. In fact, according to information from Kitty, my parents still haven't been able to open a practice.
But why is Kitty going so far to help us?
The reason behind Kitty's actions, putting everything she has into protecting us. Sherwood told me about it. Kitty had also cut ties with her parents, just like me. Hearing about it, Kitty's past was even more devastating and difficult than mine. Until she met Eleanor and got married, she had given up on her own happiness. Hearing that, I remembered an exchange between Evelyn and Kitty 3 years ago.
"But I can't believe it. To do that to their own child. Right, Kitty?"
Yeah, unbelievable. Kitty's tired expression at that time. That fatigue was because she was recalling her own past. Kitty now works as an accountant. Many of her clients are doctors, so she was able to deal with the situation this time. Also, Evelyn, who helped during the birth, seems to be a well-known figure in the midwife community, and she approached them from there as well. Mom said that by protecting Blondie, she feels like she's saving her past self. So we're the ones who should be thanking you.
Oh, Kitty.
I realized that many people support me and Terrence here. I thought I should go thank Kitty again soon. Then, a few days later, I learned from Kitty's information that my parents had their medical licenses revoked. It turned out that fraudulent practices at their previous private hospital were exposed by a former employee's report. The contents, which could be considered borderline criminal, such as fraudulent billing and violations of the Pharmaceutical Affairs Law, resulted in the harsh punishment of license revocation, not just suspension of practice. As a result, they were left with a large fine and no longer able to call themselves doctors. It's a miserable end for my parents, but it can't be helped. They were too selfish. And it's no longer any of my business. I closed my phone after finishing reading the news. I started preparing a meal for my own family. As if in reaction to my unfortunate childhood, my future was overflowing with happiness. Because things had been so bad until now, I get easily moved to tears even by little things. So much that Terrence says, "Blondie is a crybaby." Even Terrence, who says that, is already in 6th grade. He's grown up so much. Today is a classroom observation day. I'm standing next to Sherwood at the back of the classroom. We were listening to everyone read their essays aloud. Next is Terrence's turn.
My family, Terrence from class 6 to 2. My family is Dad, Mom, and our dog TYL.
Terrence's essay was an inoffensive one, mixing a child's honest feelings and public stance. But I listen intently to each and every sentence, as if savoring them. By the time he finishes reading, I can no longer hold back my tears. Terrence is probably going to be exasperated with me again, thinking I'm a crybaby. Sherwood hugs my shoulder as I wipe my tears. Terrence looks back at us from his seat and laughs as if to say, "I knew it. My happiness is right here." I deeply savor the happy moments brought to me by our beloved dog TYL, the Bluebird child. I got pregnant. Don't come back home.
What? Was I not clear? I'm having a baby with Johnny.
No way.
Pearl, it's your fault. You neglected your husband under the guise of accompanying your mother, so you got what you deserved.
Mila said this with a triumphant look. But I, without any disturbance, took the message "don't come back" quite literally.
Really? I'd be delighted to.
Johnny and Mila were dumbstruck by my unexpected reaction.
Pearl, what are you saying? Aren't you angry that I cheated?
Well, I was surprised at first, but not angry. Besides, I have a new home now.
New home?
What's that about? Yes, I have somewhere else to go. I don't need to bother with Johnny, whom I can't trust anymore. Mila can have him. I muttered that to myself. And these two were about to face an incredible disaster. I am Pearl, a 43-year-old working mother in construction. I have had a best friend from childhood, Mila. We've been hanging out since we were little. But in middle school, we became like delinquent friends due to our rebellious natures. That continued until high school graduation, but as we grew up, our lives took completely different paths. I have always hated studying, so instead I worked on self-improvement in my 20s, such as earning certifications. My efforts paid off, and my career got on the right track in my 30s. On the other hand, Mila spent her 20s and 30s partying, believing it is a waste not to. Now past 40, both unmarried. Mila didn't seem too concerned. But I, raised by a single mother after losing my father young, wanted to get married and repay my mother's upbringing. At work, most men close to my age were married. I casually asked my boss if he knew any eligible men. He introduced me to a single man close to my age. That's how I met Johnny. He was 2 years older than me, a construction company president. Serious and dignified. Johnny, who inherited the company from his parents, was work-focused like me. Busy with work and acquiring certifications, he hadn't been much interested in marriage. We clicked over having a lot in common, so we started dating. Within a year, we promised to marry. I told Mila the news.
Really? That's great, Pearl. Congratulations.
Thanks. Sorry I'm getting married before you.
Don't worry about it. Just be happy.
Mila seemed genuinely happy for me.
Thank you. You must come to the wedding.
Sure. I'll look forward to it. After informing Mila, all that was left was preparing for the wedding. Tomorrow, I'm visiting Johnny's family home for the first time. I was in a flutter of excitement. But I didn't know that the happiness would end in a blink of an eye. The next morning, I was getting ready with enthusiasm. What would Johnny's house be like? Though it's his family home, his parents have passed away. It's where Johnny now lives alone. I've always wanted to see his house. But he never invited me. It's quite far from my house, near the foot of a mountain. I planned to drive there, but Johnny offered to pick me up as the house was hard to find. Johnny said shyly while driving.
Well, it's quite rural, so don't be shocked.
No, I prefer quiet places to busy ones. Is it peaceful countryside? I'm really excited. I tried to lighten the mood, however. Johnny looked hesitant. It seemed like he wanted to imply don't expect too much. But to me, it's where my beloved one lives. The thought of seeing that was exciting. We drove over an hour after entering the neighboring town. We entered a dark bamboo grove, far from a peaceful pastoral scene. The car stopped in a place that felt like a creepy, abandoned area.
We're here. This is my house,
Johnny said, and where he dropped me off was a garage surrounded by debris. In front of me was an old house, probably over 100 years old.
So this is your... Yes, this is my house. It's quite old, but it's well built,
Johnny replied. I stood gaping, looking around every corner of the house. The property was large, but I naively thought that after marriage he would move out. However, Johnny's next words shocked me. Well, come on in. This is the house we'll live in together forever, so don't be shy.
What?
Living in this house forever after marriage? I asked Johnny, feeling faint.
Are we going to live here? It's nearly 2 hours by car from my office. Pearl, you can quit your job after we're married. My earnings are enough for us to live on.
I was stunned by Johnny's unexpected words. We had discussed our jobs, but he never mentioned wanting me to quit after marriage.
Why? I told you I love my job. Why decide I should quit without discussing it with me?
Even when I questioned him, Johnny looked puzzled and answered.
Isn't it common sense for a woman to become a housewife after marrying a well-off husband? My mother did the same. I thought we had a mutual understanding without saying.
I stood there, dumbfounded. I hadn't expected such an old-fashioned mindset in this day and age. From here, not only my company, but also my mother's house was far away. I currently live with my mother, and moving so far would be inconvenient. I was planning to discuss these things, but my mind went blank and I couldn't find the words. The house, indeed old and sturdy, had crumbling walls in places, and the floors creaked. The shower and toilet were outdated, and with few rooms, it would be inconvenient if we had children. Could I really live in this house forever? Seeing my anxious face, Johnny tried to calm me. Don't worry.
It might take some getting used to at first, but the charm of an old, antique house is great.
You'll find it comfortable soon. No, that's not the issue. I wanted to say, but couldn't. For now, I decided not to say anything and asked him to take me home before it gets too late. You should stay over, it's far, Johnny casually said, but I was not in the mood to stay. That night, I lay in bed early and thought. Right, we might start in Johnny's family home, but we can move eventually. I've been working all this time and have some savings. Surely Johnny can afford to build a new home. I decided to discuss this with him next time. On my next day off, I talked to Johnny about moving into a new house. But he didn't seem keen on the idea. Why?
It's a waste to move when we already have a house,
Johnny said, already set on living in his own home. Am I being selfish for caring about convenience to my workplace and family home? I felt a rising irritation. Yet, I didn't dislike Johnny, and we got married as planned. The wedding was grand, befitting a construction company owner. Mila attended, of course. Flashy and youthful-looking Mila stood out, attracting male attention. Even Johnny the groom.
That beautiful woman is Pearl's friend?
He asked. I felt a twinge of jealousy, despite being the bride. The wedding ended without a hitch, and our married life began. Johnny lived leisurely in his familiar home. I resigned from my job and became a housewife, but felt somewhat uneasy. So, I hatched a plan. Then one day, I received a call from the hospital where my mother was a patient. She had suddenly fallen ill and was hospitalized. I rushed to the hospital and entered the room where my mother is in.
Mom, are you okay?
Pearl, sorry for worrying you. My mother replied, looking very unwell. According to the doctor, her condition wasn't good, and she needed a long-term hospital stay. I returned home to take care of my mother for a while. Then, I packed my things and told Johnny that I'd be away for some time to accompany my mother. But Johnny didn't seem too concerned about her.
Ah, I see. Well, take your time,
he said casually. I frowned at Johnny's reaction. It sounded as if I was going out for fun, despite me saying I was attending to my seriously ill mother. Yet, Johnny looked displeased at my expression.
Huh? What's with that face? Did I say something wrong? No, it's nothing,
I replied. Come to think of it, Johnny was raised in a wealthy environment. Expecting him to understand was perhaps too much. So, I left without saying more and went back to the hospital. 3 months have almost passed since my mother was hospitalized. Her condition remains the same, requiring my constant attendance. But what bothers me is Johnny hasn't visited even once. Is he still holding a grudge because I frowned at his words? If so, that's rather childish. Lying in her bed, my mother looked at me worriedly.
Pearl, is Johnny all right? Don't worry about me. Why don't you go back home?
It's okay, Mom. I do go home occasionally. I reassured her, not wanting to worry her further, but truthfully, I felt anxious. For the first month, I did check on the house. But Johnny was always in a bad mood and hardly spoke to me. I would just finish the housework and return to the hospital. Gradually, I started feeling like Johnny was managing on his own, and I wasn't needed. Alone at night, as my mother slept, I wondered, is this how things should be? Months passed with me lost in these thoughts, when I received a call. It was Mila.
Hello?
Pearl, it's been a while.
Just thought of you and called.
Mila, really long time. How have you been? Her voice uplifted my spirits. But something in Mila's reply seemed hesitant.
Yeah. I'm fine. Oh, okay.
I felt the conversation turn awkward, beginning to feel unsure of what to talk about next. Then, Mila broached a new topic. Hey, when are you coming back home next?
What?
I hadn't told Mila I was staying away to be with my mother. Her question took me by surprise. But since she reached out after so long, I recovered myself and asked her back. What's up, Mila? Did you call for something specific?
No, nothing. Just wanted to hear your voice.
As Mila spoke.
Hey, Mila!
A familiar male voice called out in the background. Mila gasped. Oh. And hurriedly ended the call. That voice. Could it be? A chill ran down my spine. It's been over 3 months since I stopped returning home. A bad feeling crept over me, and I decided to go home the next day. And the next day. After the morning rounds at the hospital, I hurried to my house. It was Sunday, so Johnny should be home. When I arrived, a bright red sports car occupied my usual parking space in the garage. That car seemed familiar. Entering the house, I saw stylish high heels in the entrance. I was right about my suspicion.
Johnny! Are you here?
I shouted from the entrance, and Johnny emerged, looking surprised.
Pearl! Why are you back suddenly? You should have told me you were coming. Why? These shoes in the car in the garage, they're Mila's, aren't they?
Yeah,
Mila just happened to stop by.
Johnny stammered, clearly flustered. Then, Mila appeared, dressed in a baggy overalls dress.
Idiot! Don't come out!
Johnny scolded her, but Mila didn't seem to care.
Why?
It's not like it's a secret. We had to talk about it eventually, she said defiantly. Mila stood there boldly, not showing any remorse. Her outfit was unusually simple for her, a long dress covering her ankles. It looked almost like a maternity dress. As I pondered, Mila revealed a shocking truth. I got pregnant. Don't come back home.
What?
Did you not hear me?
I'm pregnant with Johnny's baby,
she exclaimed.
No way, really?
Standing aside, Mila blurted out while Johnny, with a sigh, just great, kept his gaze downcast. Perhaps Johnny wished to have this conversation in a more composed state.
Pearl, it's your fault. You were neglecting your husband under the guise of accompanying your mother. You brought this on yourself.
Mila said this with a triumphant look. But I remained calm and collected. Seeing my calm demeanor, Mila said with puffing up her cheeks,
What's with the act? I heard you don't even like this house. That's fine by me. Old as it may be, the property's spacious, the neighbors aren't nosy, and above all, Johnny's kind and wealthy. What more could I ask for?
Johnny, buoyed by her high opinion of him, suddenly changed his awkward expression.
When I first saw Mila at the wedding, it was love at first sight. So I figured, why not live with Mila instead of Pearl, who doesn't even like this house? That's right, Johnny called me after finding my contact in a guest list saying Pearl isn't coming back, so please, come over. I was unsure at first, but how could I say no when he needed me so much? I see.
I responded indifferently to Mila's smug love story.
Just playing cool, aren't you? You must be so upset. But let me remind you, Johnny's baby is growing inside me. Don't bother coming back here.
With that, I decided to graciously accept her invitation with a smile.
Really? I'd be delighted to.
My unexpected reaction left Johnny and Mila dumbfounded.
Pearl, what are you saying? Aren't you angry about my affair?
Well, I was surprised at first, but not angry. Besides, I have a new home now.
A new home? What are you talking about?
Johnny looked utterly bewildered, so I gave him further explanation.
You see, I've been house hunting since we got married. This house was fine initially, but it's not practical for children. There are no schools nearby.
Mila looked startled by my words. She hadn't considered schooling for her unborn child.
Why didn't you discuss this with me?
Because you didn't want to move from here.
So, I took it upon myself to find something. But that's no longer your concern. What do you mean?
Johnny can be so oblivious. He had an affair and even got her pregnant. There's no way we'd be moving together now.
I mean, you should stay here with Mila and your baby. You're well off, so just enroll your child in a distant school and drive them back and forth.
As I spoke, Johnny nodded.
Right.
In agreement. Mila, wide-eyed, finally addressed me.
Pearl, you're oddly compliant. How can you so easily accept Johnny and me? No, I've just lost faith in Johnny, who never once visited my seriously ill mother in the hospital. I've decided to live with her in the new house. We've arranged for home nursing care. Are you really not angry about the affair? You won't demand compensation later?
Johnny is always so self-centered. The epitome of a coddled upbringing.
Don't worry. I'm not that petty,
I replied with a slight smile. I knew they would face their own karma eventually. And so, Johnny and I divorced. I moved into the new house with my mother. It's barrier-free designed, so she can recover comfortably. It's also close to the hospital, which gives me peace of mind. As for Johnny, he began his married life with Mila in that house. Mila's belly was getting bigger, but there was no hospital nearby. So, for checkups, Johnny apparently had to drive for over an hour to take her. Even then, they might have been able to have a happy married life. After a while, I got a call from Johnny.
Hey! Why do we have to leave our house?
I thought the day had finally come. Did your uncle visit?
Yeah, he did. Did you know and hide it from me?
Johnny's uncle is his father's brother.
Huh? You should have known. That our house is owned by your uncle.
Oh. It seemed Johnny had forgotten that and continued living in that house. I learned this when I visited Johnny's relatives before our marriage. When Johnny's father, the eldest son, was dying, he entrusted the ownership of the family home to his younger brother, the uncle. It seems they thought Johnny was too unreliable to inherit it, even though he was the successor. In other words, Johnny was living there with his uncle's permission. I totally forgot about that. But yesterday, my uncle suddenly came and said, "I believe I told my wife that I was selling this land. Why did you keep such an important thing a secret?" Hearing this,
I think your uncle is quite the actor.
I couldn't help but to laugh inwardly. I had told the uncle everything up to our divorce. He was furious and promised to give Johnny a hard time. "I'm sorry. I was about to tell you about selling the house, but then you got Mila pregnant. I thought it would be best to leave the rest to you too. But it's okay. You have enough money to move anywhere, right?" "Yeah, about that." Johnny's voice suddenly turned gloomy. I knew what he was going to say, but pretended not to know.
What happened?
"I got demoted from being the president. My uncle said I was too unreliable and the employees wouldn't follow me. He told me to start over as a regular employee. So my salary is less than half now."
Oh, really?
I responded nonchalantly, but I already knew all this from Johnny's uncle. "Mila is angry. She wanted to remodel and expand the house into a spacious mansion on the land we lived in. After hearing about moving and the salary cut, she hasn't spoken to me since last night. What should I do?" Johnny sounded almost tearful. Mila was indeed after Johnny for his money.
Well, that's not my problem anymore. You should figure it out yourself. What? No, wait!
Johnny tried to stop me, but I didn't care and hung up. The next moment, Mila called. I didn't want to answer, knowing what it was about, but she would probably keep calling if I ignored her. So I reluctantly answered. Mila's voice was furious.
Hey! What are you going to do about this? It's all your fault, Pearl. I thought I had married a rich man.
Mila spat out the words I expected.
Well, it's not so bad. Johnny is a kind husband to you. And it's not like he is unemployed. That's not good enough. You knew, didn't you? That we had to move out. And you kept quiet. That's so unfair. What if I had told you earlier? If the ideal life for you became impossible, you would have left. That would be sad for the baby.
Mila had no comeback to that.
Whatever life you lead, you're going to have a family now. You need to do your best.
I said just that and hung up again. I had no resentment left for losing Johnny. I just realized I had a poor judgment of men. Forced to move, Johnny and Mila apparently moved into Mila's parents' house. Though her parents were angry about Mila marrying Johnny, who took me away, they warmly welcomed them for the sake of their coming grandchild. Then, years later, Johnny and Mila, with their child, came to see me. I hadn't told them where I moved, but they had seen me in town and followed me to find out where I lived. I wondered why they went to such lengths. Pearl, are you there? Actually, I came by because my child's kindergarten entrance exam results were announced today, and we were in the area. Mila barged into my house with her affected tone. Even as a mother now, she still sports flashy makeup and fashion. I didn't really want to see her, but fearing what she might say if I acted coldly, I responded.
You haven't changed. So? How did it go?
I wasn't interested in Mila, but knowing she'd start something anyway, I asked.
Listen to this. My child got into the best kindergarten in the area.
Ah, so you came all this way to tell me that? Well, congratulations. She clearly came to boast.
That's right. My child takes after the father in intelligence and thanks to resembling me, made a great impression at the interview.
Mila droned on with her bragging. Oh, is that so? Good for you. I replied sarcastically, to which Mila, disliking my tone, glared at me.
Despite someone's doing, we're happily living as a family now. Having a marriage and a family is wonderful, isn't it, Johnny?
Yeah, that's right. Johnny, who had been silent behind Mila, finally spoke up. Their son, indeed resembling Mila, glared at me with a proud expression. He seemed to have inherited Mila's high pride too. Speaking of the top kindergarten. Ha ha ha. Single woman like you wouldn't know about kindergartens, right? It's Nakatani Kindergarten nearby. Mila scoffed at me, so I quickly retorted.
What? Who's single? I'm remarried.
At this, both Johnny and Mila looked shocked. You're kidding, right? Isn't this your childhood home with your mother?
Yes. I have my husband living here with me.
As I said this, my husband Barrett appeared. Guests? Please, come in.
Ah. You are.
Seeing Barrett, the two of them exclaimed in surprise. Recognizing them, Barrett responded in a reminiscent tone. Ah, you must be Christy's parents from the other day's interview.
The interviewer, was it?
Yes, sorry for the late introduction. I'm Barrett, principal of Nakatani Kindergarten. Are you friends of Pearl? Thank you for your support on behalf of my wife. Hearing Barrett was the principal, they froze.
Wait, the principal is Pearl's husband? Indeed. Who would have thought someone like you would marry the principal of a prestigious private kindergarten? How did you meet?
Mila sneered at me. Unlike the old days, I've worked hard on myself. A woman like me. I didn't deserve to be mocked by Mila now.
We met at work. My company was contracted for the kindergarten's reconstruction.
Yes, I was attracted to her hard work, so I initiated our relationship. Barrett said with a shy smile. Oh, that's right. Barrett, let me introduce them. This is my ex-husband, Johnny, and his wife, Mila, who took him from me.
You're making us look bad. That's right. What are you saying in front of the child?
Both were flustered, facing the principal of their child's soon-to-be kindergartner. It's a prestigious kindergarten with strict family backgrounds. Knowing their complicated family circumstances might be a problem. Mila timidly asked Barrett.
So, about the enrollment.
Barrett's expression turned stern for a moment but then softened.
Let's see how your child does in our environment first. So, our child can enroll?
Johnny and Mila looked relieved. However, they didn't realize how challenging life in the kindergarten could be. Life at the kindergarten turned out to be a disaster for Johnny and Mila. Because in our school, parent connections are strong. Even a hint of bad reputation spreads quickly. So, the rumor that Mila stole the principal's wife's ex-husband spread like wildfire. Since it's a gathering of parents who are serious about their children's education, such rumors quickly isolated Johnny and Mila among the other parents. The parents' behavior negatively impacted the children. Innocent Christy ended up isolated from his friends, crying every day. I want to quit kindergarten. It was sad to see. Eventually, they had to leave the kindergarten, and Johnny's family disappeared from our lives. Later, Barrett heard from another kindergarten principal. Johnny's family had moved Christy to a public kindergarten. However, with many locals there, similar rumors spread. Johnny and Mila gradually found it uncomfortable to stay in the area. Before long, they left Christy behind and went somewhere far away. Recently, Mila's parents have been taking Christy to and from kindergarten and attending events. They're friendly with the neighbors, ensuring Christy can attend kindergarten comfortably, mindful of others. Previously indulgent, Mila's parents seem to have given up on Mila, focusing on raising Christy instead. I was worried about Christy, but hearing this from Barrett, I felt relieved. Some time later, Mila's parents came to apologize for everything.
We're truly sorry for the late apology. We wanted to bring Mila,
but she absolutely refused. Is Mila at home? I was surprised, having heard Johnny and his wife were missing. According to her parents, Johnny and Mila got divorced being unable to cope with poverty. Mila returned home alone. But Christy doesn't see her as a mother and ignores her at home. Time passed, and I gave birth to my first child, a daughter, at a local hospital. I made many mom friends. Though I lost a childhood friend, I look forward to spending time with moms in similar situations. Barrett took paternity leave and is being a supportive father. This might be my happiest time. No, I shall continue enjoying parenthood, blessed with a good family and friends. Like my mother, a single mom, I want to shower my daughter with love. Even if I once went in the wrong direction, I'll trust my daughter, family, friends, and more importantly in myself. I vow to live strongly as a mother. Being a husband's housekeeper, and if you defy, I'll divorce you. That's what Tyler, who stole my black card and went on a spending spree, threatened me with. Taking advantage of my being at work, he's off gallivanting on overseas vacations. I can't stand being mocked by such a ridiculous man. Sure. At my wit's end, I dismiss a call from Tyler and set out to enact a terrifying plan of revenge. My name is Harper. A former actress, I was a star who swept the nation. Having appeared in international dramas, I was once reported overseas as captivating men around the world. My popularity back then was extraordinary. My retirement from the entertainment world came about when I married Tyler, my then manager. He was my rock, skillfully supporting me as I tirelessly traveled the globe. He took care of everything, from my health to my personal life. Even after leaving showbiz, he's been a great help with the business I'm currently handling. Now, we collaborate and run a company related to apparel. I retired from the entertainment industry to marry him, and that was 10 years ago when I was 21. At the height of my fame, my retirement announcement had the media swarming my house daily. Even fanatical fans showed up. Every day, I received letters begging me not to quit, and my departure even caused a societal stir. Rumors and various media coverage abounded, but Tyler and I, oblivious to public opinion, married at the peak of our happiness. Everyone around me supported this decision. Just before retiring, I launched my own apparel brand, and now Tyler works there as an employee. I've entrusted him with the finances, while I, as a president, market our models. Though our life seems perfect, it's been far from it lately. Tyler's been acting strange. He comes home exhausted, sighing heavily, and gazes at me with an indescribable look. What's wrong, Tyler? You've been down lately. Trouble at work? I've always understood that he tends to internalize things. That's why, during our time together, I often try to gauge his mood. It seems he struggles to voice his worries and complaints on his own, always waiting for me to intuitively act. Sure, there are times when this feels bothersome, but I've never really resented it. After all, he has dealt with more troublesome things because of me. Gratitude, I suppose, has always outweighed any annoyance. I'm tired of always being the sidekick, always following your orders. His words, so unlike the expected work-related complaints, shook me. What's this all of a sudden? You've never mentioned this before. He often deliberately spoke in a way that hurt me. He starts saying these things when his work gets busy. Since he's always so firm at work, I guess he doesn't have a place to vent. I remember venting to him numerous times when I was an actress. So, I understand how he feels. But still, being confronted with such unexpected words, my voice trembled with disturbance. I've been holding back. You are busy, and I'm the one being taken care of, if you think about it. He earns decently, but after all, he's just an employee at my company. I'm the higher earner. I never thought income mattered in our marriage, so his words were a shock to me.
Even when you come home, it's all about work. You hardly pay any attention to me. When we go shopping together, you buy whatever you want without a second thought. How do you think I feel watching that? I'm actually quite patient. Why can't you be more considerate?
He, pouting like a spoiled child, looked at me with dissatisfaction. Honestly, his words irritated me. Our household mostly runs on my income. I told him he could do whatever he wanted with his salary. It's my way of thanking him for all the trouble he's gone through for me. There were times when we were poor, and he supported and provided for me. I thought I was repaying him for all his sacrifices, even until the day I retired, by letting him use his time as he pleased. It's heartbreaking to hear such ungrateful words from him. The clothes and accessories I buy during our shopping trips are from money I saved. If anything, I'm the one who's been holding back. These thoughts flash through my mind, and anger starts to build within me.
Harper, you're just too free. I want more time off, and I'd like to travel leisurely. The job at the company pays well but leaves no time. I joined your company specifically to ease your burden. Don't I deserve some gratitude? Instead of prioritizing your time, give me some time to rest too.
When I retired, he chose to continue in the entertainment industry as a manager, staying behind while I left. But when my business started taking off after we got married, Tyler changed his mind and wanted to be my support. If I join the company, you won't be lonely, right? I want to be there for you, Harper. Since I wanted to spend more time with him, I agreed to let him join our company. I never asked him to join, so why am I being treated like this? Isn't this life enough? Isn't he being too selfish? While I was pondering this, he made a proposal that felt like a final blow. Hey, my parents are turning 60 soon. Can I take some time off for their celebration? That's all I ask. No more demands from me, but I'll need 2 weeks off. I want to take them on an overseas trip. They've never been to Mexico, and I want to show them the delicious food and beautiful sights there. I was taken aback by his unexpected request and felt a sense of discomfort. A 2-week vacation could be easily taken by using paid leave. Our company is known for its easy vacation policies. There's no reason for such a confrontational approach unless something else is going on. Despite this, the fact that he would come to me directly with such a hostile attitude for negotiation struck me as odd. I thought so, but it was just a hunch. There was nothing concrete to prove this uneasy feeling. While suppressing my irritation, I calmly responded. That's fine, but I can't join you this year. There's an important fashion show for our models and the Paris collection needs preparation. Can you ask if next year works? I'll adjust my schedule then. As his wife, I can't miss my parents-in-law's 60th birthday celebration. But this year, our company has 2 major events, and I can't afford the time to travel. I suggested postponing, but he refused with a smile. That's fine. I'll just go with my family. I want to spend some time with them. As the accountant, my absence won't disrupt the work too much. His reference to family pained me, as if implying I'm an obstacle. So, how about it? I deserve some free time too, right? He has always been someone who speaks without malice, often impulsively. His honesty and straightforwardness are some of his good traits, but sometimes he speaks too hastily. No one is perfect, and I chose him as my partner, flaws included, but this way of speaking is just too much. Even if he doesn't intend it, why do I have to be spoken to like this? Doesn't he care about me at all? Harper? Are you listening to me? Despite this, I've always received great care from my parents-in-law. I can't often visit their house due to work, but when I do, they treat me like their own daughter, always praising my work. I'm so happy to have such a proud daughter. Samantha, my mother-in-law, expressed joy since I married, and Cody, my father-in-law, also celebrated our marriage with happiness. It's their birthday celebration, after all. I understand his desire to celebrate it this year. But how can I respond positively after being spoken to in such a manner?
It's no problem. Take 1 or 2 weeks, whatever you prefer.
Unable to bear his harsh words, I let my anger show. This must have been the turning point for Tyler. He stood up, irritated, and left the living room without a word. We have separate bedrooms due to our work schedules. From that day until his departure for the trip, we didn't see each other at all. Is that really true? Isn't Tyler being too harsh? Mia, my secretary, noticed something was off on the day Tyler left for his trip and pressed me for details. Mia is truly a talented individual and has been a support since I started running the company. As women, we often share the same opinions, and I trust her perhaps even more than Tyler. She's adept at sensing my moods and quick to assist when I'm down or about to make a mistake. I dote on Mia like family. She looks up to me like a sister, and I often consult with her. Her candid advice is always helpful. And now, noticing my unusual demeanor, she expressed her concern. I hesitated at first to tell her everything, but if I continued working like this, it could affect my performance. I decided to confide in her about everything that had happened up to today. She furrowed her brow in anger as I spoke. If I were his wife, I'd have spoken up firmly. I've always thought this, but Harper, you're too lenient with him. I understand you love him, but you shouldn't let yourself be taken for granted. Her straightforward reasoning felt like a blow to my heart. In a world where everyone hesitates to speak their mind to me, Shay's the only one who treats me as an equal. This refreshing and comforting feeling is precious to me. As one's position rises, people tend to become more humble and reserved. Having someone like her who confronts me head-on is truly invaluable.
You're right. What should I do?
Can't you call Tyler? Maybe try talking to him after work today? There's no need to be considerate about disturbing his trip. If this continues, it could lead to a divorce crisis. Do you understand? Her sisterly advice left me with no response but to agree. Since work ended early that day, following her suggestion, I decided to call him immediately. He was in Mexico. The time difference wasn't significant, and he should be resting in his room after dinner. I had texted him earlier to let him know I needed to talk, so he should be expecting the call. Expecting no issues, I called, but he didn't answer.
Maybe he's still enjoying his time with everyone? I'll try calling again later.
I tried calling every 30 minutes, but still no answer. Worried, I contacted Samantha to inquire about Tyler's well-being.
Hello, Harper. Sorry we went on this trip just with our family. Cody and I told Tyler we'd prefer if you were with us, but he insisted.
Samantha used to be strict and education-focused, as Tyler once told me. But now, she's kind and always concerned about my busy life, offering comforting words.
No, I'm sorry I couldn't make it this year due to our company's busy schedule. Next year, I'll make time for a proper celebration.
Oh, don't worry about it. Just the fact that you're giving us such a wonderful trip is more than enough. Samantha's kind words with a smile made me feel uneasy.
A trip is a gift?
Hearing a word that was unfamiliar to me, I asked Samantha to clarify. She seemed surprised by my question and explained the situation with a tone of shock.
Oh, isn't that right? I heard from him that this trip was fully funded by you since you couldn't join the trip. Wait, what?
I screamed out loud, completely unaware of this story. Samantha must have realized from my reaction that I knew nothing about it. She hurriedly continued her explanation, seemingly puzzled.
Isn't this trip arranged by you? He paid for everything using your credit card, so I thought it was a gift from you.
The trip included Samantha and Cody, of course, as well as my sister-in-law, Luna, and her husband, Tommy. 5 people in total. Even a conservative estimate for flight costs alone would be around $300 per person. With other expenses included, the total would easily surpass $1,500. Using such a significant amount of money without consultation was completely out of line. Especially since I've been managing our living expenses. He doesn't gamble, his salary should be entirely at his disposal. He should have more than enough income to cover such costs himself. Yet here we are. With him not answering my calls, my emotions were filling with anger. Samantha, sensing my distress, spoke with concern.
Harper, are you okay? We'll repay the full amount later. Tyler wanted to cover all the travel expenses, which felt odd to us.
Cody and I were planning to visit you later, since we haven't seen you in a while. This trip might have been orchestrated under unbelievable circumstances. Samantha thought, and with a tone of concern, she spoke to me considerately.
You are not at fault. Please use that money for your enjoyment, as it's also a celebration for you. I'll make sure Tyler takes care of the bill. Could you tell me more about how this trip was planned?
I wondered what he was up to, not answering my calls. This trip must have been meticulously planned months in advance. He was using me, capitalizing on my ignorance. Such thoughts began to emerge at that moment. Then, as I heard more from Samantha, I learned a shocking truth.
The trip was initially proposed by Luna and Tommy.
Incredibly, it wasn't Tyler who suggested this, but Luna and Tommy, who always nitpicked at me. Tommy, an executive at a rival company. Tommy, looking down on me for being a female CEO and considering our companies our rivals, always seemed displeased when we met. Luna, always full of pride, had a grip on Tyler even before our marriage, and he couldn't stand up to her. It seems they didn't like him showing me any affection. It seems they disliked the affection Tyler showed towards me. Even though they conveniently used him themselves, they couldn't stand him being even slightly nice to me. Both Luna and Tommy, always competitive, disliked me, and I tried to keep my distance from them. However, they targeted me and persuaded Tyler to plan this trip. It's likely that his aggressive confrontation with me that day was instigated by Luna and Tommy. They probably wanted him to create a situation where I would be the unwanted one, as they thought they couldn't enjoy themselves with me around. They chose a day when they could make me an outcast and brought Tyler along to provide the funds.
I'm so sorry, I didn't know anything about this. Tyler told us not to contact you directly because you were busy.
Samantha apologized. If Samantha, Cody, and I, unaware of the plan, had communicated, the plan would have been exposed, potentially straining my relationship with Tyler. To prevent this, Samantha and Cody were instructed to restrict their actions. To prevent any disruption of their plan, it was necessary to impose certain restrictions on Samantha and Cody beforehand. For them, unaware of how busy my work schedule was, Tyler's advice was taken as an absolute directive. They adhered strictly to his words, deciding to thank me only after they returned from the trip.
Harper, did you give Tyler a credit card or something? He was making payments with a black card I've never seen before.
What? Samantha's frantic behavior suggested that Cody was also listening and had a question for me. The moment Cody mentioned the black card, I hastily checked the contents of my safe. The black card he referred to was the important credit card used for company expenses. Only Tyler and I, who knew the safe's password, could access it. I had trusted him enough not to suspect him of stealing, but the credit card that should have been in the safe was missing, revealing that he had been secretly embezzling company funds. As the accountant, he could freely manipulate the records. He had exploited his position, misusing company funds for personal gain. Realizing this fact, my anger reached its peak, and I shared the story with Samantha and Cody. Both of them were shocked to learn this astonishing fact. They must have been dumbfounded. Falling silent as if they had lost their words, Samantha seemed to be panicking in a flustered manner.
What should we do? Are we complicit in this embezzlement?
We'll return to the US immediately with Tyler. Even though we didn't know, we're still complicit. We'll accept our punishment when we get back. Cody's words, full of responsibility, made me deny their need for punishment. It wasn't Samantha and Cody's fault. They were completely unaware of the scheme orchestrated by Luna, Tommy, and Tyler. Punishing them was out of the question for me.
Cody, that's unnecessary. You two were deceived by Tyler and knew nothing. You're not at fault. But I can't let them get away with this. Can you help me with something I'm planning?
Sure.
I've been ignoring what Tyler has been doing all this time, and that was my mistake. He's been making a fool of me, thinking an apology would suffice if he got caught. This isn't just a marital issue, it's a company issue. I need to teach him a lesson.
All right. We'll help with anything we can. With this, I laid out a revenge plan to them. I was surprised at my own capacity for such a scheme, but my affection for Tyler had clearly ended. Filled with hatred and anger, I revealed my terrifying plan, initially bewildering Samantha and Cody. However, realizing their responsibility as parents, they made a decision. They agreed to my plan, choosing to be my allies in this matter. During this discussion, Tyler unexpectedly called me. I ended the call with Samantha and Cody to answer his call.
What's up? Having a family trip and still wanting to talk about something important?
His sarcastic words only increased my irritation.
You took your time to call. What were you doing? Just having some drinks at a bar with Mom and the others.
This confirmed his lie. I had just been on the phone with Samantha and Cody, and there was no noisy bar in the background. Moreover, there was no reason for them to lie to me. Likely, Tyler was out drinking with Luna and Tommy. His words, so dismissive of our time and relationship, confirmed my feelings had completely cooled.
Oh, is that so? By the way, Tyler, you haven't been doing anything with the company's expenses, have you?
He was clearly startled by my sudden question.
What's this all of a sudden?
His tone, usually light and cheerful, turned serious, unlike anything I had heard from him before. Was this his true nature? His change in tone, seeing me as an adversary, prompted me to respond firmly.
I was just wondering, considering an audit is coming up soon for the company. You're suspecting me?
His defensive response to a simple question indicated his guilt. His poor reply made me laugh involuntarily.
What's the matter? I was just worried and asked, and now you think I'm suspecting you. Did you do something wrong?
Nothing like that.
But hey, when I get back home, the house isn't going to be a mess, is it?
Suddenly changing his demeanor and trying to switch the topic, his actions became even more suspicious. Why couldn't he realize that such behavior only made him more suspect? I was almost impressed by his lack of intelligence.
What do you think? I'm busy with work, too.
Stop it.
I hate the idea of coming back to a dirty house with bugs and stuff, you know? A wife is her husband's housekeeper, and if you defy, I'll divorce you. Even the executive director often threatens his wife with that. I might have to do the same.
You wouldn't like that, right? So, keep the house clean. I had never seen he and the executive director being friendly. What he was saying now was probably his true feelings. But, perhaps aware of his weaker position, he used someone else as a shield, making me sigh in exasperation at his patheticness.
Sure, I'll be careful.
There was no need to continue the conversation with him. He was completely underestimating me. Using company funds and embezzling. I could have him arrested for embezzlement. I won't show mercy, even to my husband. But that alone wouldn't satisfy me. After hanging up with him, I immediately made a call to a certain place. The next day, as I was busy preparing for a fashion show, I received several calls. Of course, it was Tyler. I noticed his calls late at night, while I was out for a certain reason. Fortunately, Mia was with me, so she drove while I answered his call.
You're late. What have you been doing?
His rough tone, heard through the speakerphone, surprised both Mia and me.
Just work, what else? Harper, did you do something yesterday? Something? What do you mean? Don't play dumb. Tell me the truth. What did you do?
Tyler was in total panic, and in the background, I could hear several Mexican men confronting Luna, Tommy, and Tyler.
It sounds noisy. What's happening? It's nothing.
He suddenly became flustered after shouting. Realizing he'd be at a disadvantage if he spoke out, he struggled to find the right words. His behavior was so bizarre that I decided to explain the situation to him. It was time for him to taste true despair. Too bad.
You were supposed to be enjoying a lavish time in Mexico, but now you've woken up from that dream overnight, right? But it's your own fault for misusing someone else's money. Did you do something, Harper?
While he was reacting strangely, I explained what I had done the previous day. I contacted the president of the credit card company I had a contract with. Despite the late hour, the president, always grateful for my patronage, agreed to suspend the company's credit card early in the morning. If a credit card is misused, the company doesn't have to pay the shop, so the shop bears the full loss. However, this time, since the payment was supposed to be made in full at the hotel checkout, Tyler, unable to use the stopped card, was now stranded and being questioned at the hotel reception.
Tyler, Mom and Dad have already checked out. The cab they reserved took them away, so there's no one to pick you up.
Luna, cornered, desperately asked Tyler what to do. Hearing this, he became even more panicked and turned his anger towards me.
Doing such a thing, you think you can get away with it? Are you okay with us getting divorced?
Please do.
In fact, I prefer a divorce from a husband who embezzles company funds. I've already spoken to the lawyer, and will proceed with the divorce proceedings.
He, flustered by my unshaken demeanor, realized his mistake.
I've been silent about everything you have done so far. There was truth in him supporting my work, and I was grateful to him. But I've reached my limit. But,
realizing his dire situation, he pathetically acknowledged my fury. The reception, relentlessly demanding payment, showed no mercy. He, relying on an interpreter, couldn't speak Spanish at all. Listening to this, I had an idea and suggested to him to pass the phone to them.
Nobody there speaks Spanish, right? Can you let me talk to them?
I'll explain for you.
Will you help me? I'm glad to switch.
Thinking that I had changed my mind after his apparent regret, he quickly handed his mobile phone to the hotel reception. I explained the situation to the reception in Spanish, and they quickly understood. To ease any concerns, I got their contact information, which Mia noted down. They happily agreed to cooperate with my deal. After talking to me, they returned the phone to Tyler.
What happened? Did you sort it out?
Yes, I took care of it.
Now it's up to you guys to manage. Really? You're a lifesaver, Harper. I love you.
With that, he was called back to the reception. Unaware of our conversation, he ended the call and followed them. Are you okay? This might turn into a big problem.
Just perfect. It's the right kind of hell for them.
An hour later, as expected, Tyler called many times. When I answered, he was in a pathetic state.
What's going on, Harper? What is this place?
He showed me a video call of a slum street. Tyler, Luna, and Tommy had been taken to the slums and stripped of all their belongings. The fact that they ended up in one of Mexico's most dangerous slums was unexpected. The receptionist had told me, I was a fan of Harper. I'll arrange the punishment, leave it to me. But I never expected it would be this place. I laughed out loud at the location, far beyond my expectations. Lucky you.
Still alive in the most dangerous place in Mexico. It's a miracle you're alive. That's impossible. Wait, Harper. What do you mean? Explain, and come to help us right now.
From the video call, it was clear they could hear my voice. The homeless people surrounding them were causing a commotion.
You were causing trouble for Harper. It's your fault. You three should reflect.
Samantha and Cody appeared on the call, surprising Luna and the others.
Mom and Dad, what are you doing? Harper's acquaintance flew us back on a private jet to the US, and Harper came to pick us up. We knew you were trying to trap Harper. We asked her to do whatever she wanted.
At that moment, the homeless people behind them started questioning Luna, Tyler, and Tommy. The slum residents were merciless, even to women, if they seemed to have anything valuable. As they argued on the video call in the dangerous streets, it was natural they'd become prey. I spoke to the locals in the background, smiling.
These men have been misusing my credit card and have been terrible to me every night. Do whatever you like with them. I want them to see hell.
They agreed, saying, leave it to us. The call ended abruptly, likely because the phone was taken. Since then, they have been living in fear in the slums. treated poorly by the locals, and unable to afford a return to the US. They were effectively trapped abroad. I confirmed the events with the hotel reception afterward. Their acquaintance, apparently a boss in the slums, agreed to take care of Tyler and the others in exchange for a treat of fine liquor. The agreement was made on the condition that they'd be safe from life-threatening situations. In return, I agreed to sing at their hotel, the only song I released during my active years.
The song you released is still my treasure. Your thanks can be in the form of a song, so come stay at our hotel. I'll tell the manager to give you the best service.
With this, I successfully took my revenge on Tyler and the others. Since then, I've managed to divorce Tyler with the help of the men from the hotel. I feel relieved and am spending enjoyable times with Samantha and Cody. Luna and Tommy were fired for their unauthorized absence from work. Without their phones, they couldn't contact anyone. Samantha and Cody explained the situation well, so it didn't become a police matter, and no one else cared about them. Thus, my ties with Tyler were completely severed. Since then, I've been focusing on my work and enjoying life. Occasionally, I call the hotel reception to check on Tyler and the others, who are still living in a hellish environment. I feel no pity for them, despite the severity of their punishment. I only asked to spare their lives and now enjoy my own life to the fullest.